We're joined on the phone today by author Richard Zoglin. We're talking about his new book, Elvis in Vegas, How the King Reinvented the Las Vegas Show. Hey, Richard, how you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited about this book. Can you tell the listeners a bit about it? Elvis in Vegas, How the King Reinvented the Las Vegas Show.
The book was a start. I started doing the book because I wanted to do a book on the Las Vegas golden age of entertainment in the 60s, from the Rat Pack to Elvis. The Rat Pack in 1960, Elvis in 1969. But I quickly discovered how long and strong a relationship Elvis had with Las Vegas. Elvis kind of took over the book, and I started in 1956 when Elvis actually first played Las Vegas. Most people don't know. He was on a bill with Freddie Martin's orchestra and Shecky Green when he was just starting out. It was kind of an odd show for Las Vegas, and he didn't do very well. But Elvis loved Vegas, and he was a regular visitor to Las Vegas all through the late 50s and 60s. He would come back there often. He would see shows. He would pick up showgirls, and he made Viva Las Vegas there in 63. He married Priscilla there in 67. And so he had this long relationship in Vegas when it was time for him finally to make a comeback to live performing. And he did it at the brand-new International Hotel, which was just built in 1969, in the biggest showroom in Vegas. And it was the show that revitalized Elvis's career and also changed Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the average person, when they think of Elvis and Vegas, they think maybe he was kind of sad or comical, maybe. But your book is painting the complete picture of what it really meant for his career at that time.
Right. It is easy to remember those later years when the white suits got gaudier and the shows were more bombastic. And Elvis too was obviously gaining weight and getting crazier on stage. So it was easy to sort of make fun of those years, but I wanted to remind people what a powerful, dynamic performer he was at the beginning of those Vegas years, and what an achievement that Vegas comeback show was in August 69. That, a guy who had not performed for almost a decade live, and who was considered over the hill, and, the Beatles and the Stones and the whole rock revolution, it sort of left him behind. But for him to come back and do the old rock songs and do the new stuff. He introduced at that show, that first Vegas show, he introduced the song Suspicious Minds, a 7-minute version of that song. And that record was released during the Vegas show and became his first number one hit in 7 years. So it really brought Elvis back. The critics loved him. The fans loved him. He sold out every show for 4 weeks, 7 nights a week, 2 shows a night. So I just want to remember that great achievement. And he was great for that show and for the next year or two until it started to become a grind. And, it was sad what happened after, but I want to remember the early great years.
Yeah, it is almost like he has two separate careers, more the R&B style and then the jumpsuit karate stuff that he did later on. But do you think, is it fair to say the success of those Vegas shows, and the resurgence of his career eventually is kind of what led to his death, with the grind and the schedule that he had?
Well, I have to say it may have contributed. I don't blame Las Vegas, but Colonel Parker was kind of big on the easy payday. And that's why he kept doing the movies, even though the movies were getting worse and Elvis was bored to death with them. The Colonel could still get movie contracts through the 60s, so he kept Elvis on that movie treadmill. Same in Las Vegas when it worked so well, and just a huge success for Elvis. But then the Colonel signs a 5-year contract, and Elvis was back twice a year, 4 weeks at a time, for year after year after year, and you just can't do the same thing over and over again. And so I think that contributed to the boredom, to the restlessness, to the drugs. And it wasn't just Vegas. I mean, he was touring, too, and the tour schedule was grinding, grueling.
Sure.
And so it just wore him down. So all that contributed to the sad end that we know for Elvis Presley.
Again, author Richard Zoglin with us. We're talking about his new book, Elvis in Vegas. And Richard, the book obviously very heavy on Elvis, but one thing that kind of happened from this, nowadays everyone from, Celine Dion to Aerosmith kind of setting up shop in Vegas really kind of changed the whole way things are done nowadays.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to show was how that show, Vegas not only saved Elvis's career, but Elvis in a way saved Vegas. He at least set it in a new direction. He had a big rock concert type of show in a town that didn't know really what to do with rock music. They weren't, the only rock groups that played Vegas were a few rock and rhythm and blues groups might play the lounges, but to fill a big stage like that. And that was also Elvis brought in a different kind of audience, a much more middle American audience that had not been to Vegas before. Maybe they weren't the big gamblers. And so that was the audience that Vegas was kind of moving toward over the next couple of decades. And the residencies, starting with Celine Dion through, Lady Gaga, they all are big rock concert-like shows, obviously. And if you look back, Elvis was really the first of those kind of shows. So I think he was the model for what came later. It was started with people like Cher and Dolly Parton, and now Lady Gaga. It's so Elvis was really one of the inventors of the new Las Vegas.
Well, again, Richard, I wish we had some more time. Definitely a fascinating period in history, and the book is great, Elvis in Vegas. So thank you so much for your time today.
Great. Thanks a lot for having me.
And again, that was author Richard Zoglin and his book, Elvis in Vegas, How the King Reinvented the Las Vegas Show, is available now.